We're live.
Welcome to another episode of Axe of the Blood God, an independent RPG podcast. I'm your host, Kat Bailey. Joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Nadia Oxford.
Hello, Kat. Our very esteemed guest and friend, Moon Blazewolf, just said Mako Zamboni, and I just... I know exactly what that is, and I love that thing. I just love that thing.
Reminds me of when you fight a whole hockey team in Final Fantasy VIII for some reason.
Yeah, see, Japan, when they know what hockey's about, at least the blessed people do.
You murder Galbadia Garden's entire hockey team.
Someone had to do it.
Also joining me, as always, my equally lovely co-host, Eric Van Allen.
Good morning. Happy we can finally talk about Rebirth Day.
Woo! For all who celebrate.
Yes, and on that occasion, I'm joined by my lovely co-worker, Nick Limon.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
This is it, folks. It's time to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The reviews are here. They're amazing. We've all played it to some extent or another. Some of us have finished it. Some of us have not. And we're going to be sharing a lot of our thoughts, not all of our thoughts, because we are going to try and keep spoilers at a minimum. We're going to keep it pretty high level. I would say that demo stuff is relatively fair game, but beyond that, we're going to try and avoid major story-based things and major differences with Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII and Rebirth. But we are going to talk because, boy, oh boy, do we have thoughts on this one. There's a lot to break down, so please look forward to that. But before we get there, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on the podcatcher of your choice. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/bloodgodpod, where for just $1 a month, you can get the podcast ad-free and join our Discord and support all the wonderful things that we do. We are coming up on another Pantheon vote, folks. We need to figure that one out. And we are also coming up on our big podcast about, this is Victor's moment to shine, Sakura Tyson. So that's going to be a fun one. I'm going to be talking about that. And of course, we have lots of merch on shop.bloodgodpod.com. You can go get old Pantheon episodes on the Patreon page and many other things as well. So go and check it out. Okay, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It has a 92 on Metacritic. As usual, the rhetoric around it is overheated. I saw somebody call it the best Final Fantasy, which is a statement.
To say. Well, at least you didn't
The
say
internet
it was
loves a
Schindler's
hyperbole.
List of Final Fantasy.
Yes, it is review time. So people who have been kind of in the tank playing it for the past 70 hours are like coming out delirious going, it's amazing. Nick, you finished it. Please give me your thoughts.
You know, I really enjoy it. I don't, it's too hard to say off the top, since it's so fresh, there's always that recency bias that it is the greatest game of all time, and let alone the greatest Final Fantasy. But I think that it is a nice companion to the original Final Fantasy VII, as is Remake. And it is a very similar 1-2 step, and it is, I can see it becoming people's favorite Final Fantasy very easily, as 7 is that for a lot of people. Personally, 7 is my favorite, but I will publicly acknowledge that's 6.
That's your favorite. That's number one.
7 is my favorite, but I will publicly acknowledge 6 is the best one.
You better in my presence.
I'm an 8 stan.
That's
and
fair.
I feel like
we love you, Kat. That's what we love you because of that.
Thank you. Whichever Final Fantasy you like says a lot about you. I think it's like one of those internet personality tests. So, what is it about 7 specifically that you love, Nick?
I think it's the kind of weirdness surrounding the game. So much of the original PlayStation 1's identity is around kind of experimental entertainment. With the release of stuff like VII Ribbon, the Jumping Flash, and just people getting weird with disc-based software, and I think that the original Final Fantasy VII kind of encapsulates that very well. I'm reading through Matt Leone's incredible oral history of Final
That
Fantasy
is
VII.
that's actually some of the best games writing you can still
It's
read. I recommend it
it's
to
so
everybody.
good.
BTW, when he released that, we had him on the show
We did.
many
My
years
God.
ago talk
Wow.
about it. So go check the backlog. It's like 2017 or something like that. So
We existed in
But-
2017.
yes, we
Oh,
existed
holy
in
shit.
2015, Nadia. If you go far enough
no.
back, you can find the reaction. Jeremy Parrish and I reacting to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Terrible audio quality and all.
Oh,
Oh
gracious me.
man.
It's a historic
Yeah.
moment. I'm still mad that the audio quality on it is so bad.
But just hearing Leon talk a little bit about, talking to the developers and hearing it from their mouth, how they
Yeah.
kind of work hand in step with Sony to kind of retool the PlayStation in order to get this game kind of running and chugging along. So just hearing how kind of tied it was to that early console generation was kind of fascinating to me and really eye-opening, and just seeing why things were the way they were, why they have cylindrical arms. It's like, well, we couldn't quite figure out emoting very well. So just all that stuff turned into this weirdness surrounding the game. And I was the formative age of discovering, like, wait a second, there's a country called Japan that makes cool stuff that I like. Like, oh,
I
like, that's
learned that
interesting.
Japan exists.
And so I think that all kind of worked hand in step to kind of just make me kind of who I am today. And it's the reason why, oh, is there a big sword in it? Yeah, I'll check it out.
I think
Is
that
there a
7.
sword? I will play.
So I know exactly where you're coming from in terms of like 6 is the best, but like 7 is there's something so neat about 7. And of course, reached a point where I was like, oh, 7's not that good. Blah blah blah. We all kind of reached that point, and then I played it again shortly after I got married. It was like in the early 2000s. I'm like, the thing I really love about this game, and I realized it right then, is that its atmosphere is unbeatable. There's no game that feels like it, and so many games have tried. And the work that went into Midgar in particular, like one thing that I noticed was like with 16-bit RPGs, like graphics like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, they're brilliant, but a room is going to have the same tile set because you don't have that room to move around. Whereas in FF7, I noticed everybody kind of had these rendered houses that fit their description. Like you have this one couple in Midgar who are like, oh yeah, our kid moved away, he's not here anymore, and you still see his effects are there. Like he has like, they say, oh, he was kind of an asshole, he was a bit rebellious, and he had like a Jolly Roger flag in his bedroom, and other stuff there that reported, okay, this kid was here and he was kind of an asshole, but they miss him because he's probably all right.
So
There's a lot of personality.
There is.
while I was playing Rebirth, the person I was with was playing Final Fantasy VII, the OG.
Nice.
Like she was watching me play Rebirth, and she was like, "I want to play Final Fantasy VII." So she like gets it on her Switch and starts playing it, and it was really interesting to watch them side by side in many respects. I will say, first of all, the Junon theme in Final Fantasy VII is the most obnoxious
It's
theme
so bad.
ever.
It's so awful. I hate it.
And Rebirth just automatically, dramatically improves
Yeah.
upon that entire sequence.
Yeah.
I love so much about that sequence. Let me just say, they really love their rhythm games in Final
Yes,
Fantasy
they
VII.
do. They
On
sure
the flip
do.
side, I'm sorry, Rebirth has pacing issues.
Yeah.
That's what happens when it has Hobbit syndrome. That's what happens when you take a game that's realistically probably about 30 hours, 30 to 40 hours, and you blow it up into a freaking trilogy that's 200 hours long. I'm sorry, it has huge pacing issues.
And you do have to kind of fill in the blanks for the story. I think like certain set pieces have to happen to show this is how the team got from point A to point B story-wise, because it doesn't make sense anymore to just walk outside and suddenly, hey, we're in calm. You know what I mean?
There's a particular dungeon in this game where they keep doing that, where they're like, oh, here is what was happening here while this other thing was happening, and it drove me nuts by the end of it, because I was like, I genuinely think you can be like a little bit more okay with just letting things happen here. But I'm going to flip side this and say that while I do agree that it has pacing issues, one thing I really love about Rebirth is how much it expands on just the little things in this world and makes it feel so much more like large and open. And
Junon is so much more interesting in this one.
Yeah, like the actual regions, the places of FF7 feel really fascinating to explore. And really, like, I think the achievement of this game is how well it handles open world exploration. I could not believe that they were going to do open world as well as they ended up doing, and I've really enjoyed this.
Doesn't it get repetitive? Like after you're like doing it the fourth time, it's like, this again.
Not for me, because
really.
I love doing that kind of stuff. I like going around an ecosystem and finding out about what's living there and how they're living there. And there is a I don't know if it's a spoiler to. Chadley exists in the first.
Oh yeah,
Chadley's back, baby.
Yeah, Chadley is back, and he has your phone number and will not stop texting you.
Yeah, but I like doing that kind of stuff. Like, oh, here's the legend of the summon monster for this area. Here's you know stuff. I found that very interesting, and chocobos whip ass in this game. Like they will do anything.
I love the chocobos. Yeah.
Not only that though, but Chadley also has like the world intel where he kind of fleshes out like a history. You know, you learn that there's things before Shinra in the world of Gaia, which was fascinating to me. And to Eric's point, they did such a good job of adapting the world map of the original Final Fantasy VII and turning it into the thing that you imagined it was when you were a kid. All those flat polygon valleys and the flat forests that you would run through on PlayStation 1 now become fully embellished, artistically rendered. Like, oh, you know, what if Junon was this dilapidated, like a marina, and there's like pirate ships that are destroyed off the coast, and there's just like so much intricacy there, and it's just like, oh, people live here, and it really feels like a lived-in world. The way I think Remake did a good job of kind of making Midgar feel more lived in, as opposed to a place that I'm just simply walking through.
I think there are some places you can tell that they've embellished, because you have very much, I think Junon was where I noticed it, where it was like, here's where the main plot happens, and then here's the other part of the world where all the open world stuff is, and they feel very like separate from each other. But I think a lot of the open worlds do a really good job of not just giving you, like you were saying, Nick, like that sense of being able to see that people live here, that this is like a world that is lived in. But also, I will say the early areas are a little bit straightforward. You just kind of run around and pick stuff up, especially that first area is it's the hinterlands of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But
it's still fun. I still enjoyed it. Yeah.
Later ones introduce some like movement mechanics, some like ways of getting around that at least make you have to kind of rethink how you approach it. I won't say more on how those happen. It's not that they're spoilery. I just don't want to get into the details. But like, they do think of ways to not just change how you move around the environment, but also change the things you're doing, because the quests do start to add different side activities, and that does get spoilery.
So at a high level, to me, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth retroactively makes Remake much worse. It makes Remake
feels
look
like a prologue. Yeah.
You may recall that I reviewed Remake.
No.
And I gave it like a 3.5 out of 5 at US Gamer. And at the time I struggled with a little bit with it. I'm like, people are pretty high on this. Am I like being mean to it? I mean, it is kind of the best 7 out of 10 I've ever played. But in hindsight, I'm like, no. Like, this game Rebirth makes Remake look like an early access demo to me. Like, there's just having the full world to explore, having basically the whole cast, having all of those mini games, it's so much more fleshed out. It's so much more colorful. It's so much more fun, to the point that I told my colleague Alex, she was like, oh, should I play? I want to play Remake first. I'm like, don't play Remake. Just watch the recap, play Rebirth. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, just go straight to Rebirth.
There is a recap, though, isn't there? I think there's a story so far.
Just watch the recap, jump right back into Rebirth.
There is. I'm a big proponent of, I think what this game is trying to do throughout most of its run is really just play on your heartstrings and your emotions. a lot, and that's like the most I'll say in that regard. But it is like trying to intentionally play on people who are like really attached to the idea of Final Fantasy VII and stuff like that. So I do think you will probably get more out of this if you are someone who already enjoys Final Fantasy VII and wants to like engage more with Final Fantasy VII than if you're coming to it. I would love to read the review of somebody who this was their first, like their first Final Fantasy. I would be fascinated to see what their takeaway is from it, because it, much like the rebuilds of Evangelion, this feels like a game that is deeply in conversation with its own place in history and legacy. But I do find it more interesting because of that, because I feel like this game more head-on tackles that than Remake did.
Yeah, I think the remake trilogy will end up telling something that is a self-contained story that will totally work by itself, but you will feel that you are lacking the context that I think is expected of not only 7, but even stuff like Advent Children, even stuff like Dirge of Cerberus, and stuff like the what is it, Tales of Two Past book.
Oh yeah,
On the Way to a Smile. Like, I have the book somewhere around here,
I
but
gotta
like
read that sometime.
there's so much metatextual stuff and there's so much intertextual stuff that I think is like there for people who are sickos like me and want to do it. And I think that the remake trilogy is kind of expecting you, if you want to know everything, to have ingested all of that information. So
For the love of God, it has a major character from Ever Crisis.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you haven't been playing Ever Crisis, which unfortunately I have.
At this point, it's just like Final Fantasy Remake, the trilogy. They're incorporating all of it. Compilation, the novels, the mobile games. It's all there.
If you watched the Advent Children re-release that was in theaters this past week, they had like an interview with Hamaguchi. I believe Kitase was in there. I didn't get a chance to watch it because I owned the 4K Blu-ray disc already. But I think one thing that Nomura talked about was he was excited that the remake trilogy, and I believe it was also Nojima, said that it offered them the opportunity to kind of take a step back, look at everything they had done with the compilation of Final Fantasy VII, and be like, what stuff can we just organically weave in to the remake trilogy? And there's like, fun revelations. And I got yelled at on the IGN YouTube because I suggested that the Loz Kadaj, and I forget the other dude's name from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, a remnant of Sephiroth, was like, oh, a fan theory was confirmed that they are the Whispers you fight at the end of Remake.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody was like, no, that was revealed in the Ultimania book, which I also have, but I forgot. But stuff like that, the stuff that's really nitty gritty, it's being woven back into the game. And so maybe we won't get a full Dirge of Cerberus remake, but maybe elements of that story will be woven in, as we've kind of already seen with
I'm already
Intergrade.
predicting that like the Dirge of Cerberus stuff, like part 3 is going to be so compilation heavy that I wouldn't even be shocked if they went straight past the ending and went on to like an playable Advent Children kind of situation.
If we get that fight scene with Tifa in the church, it's all worth it, because that's an all-timer right there.
My question, Advent Children, yes, that was just re-released. It was actually playing in Toronto, but I didn't get to go see it. What I want to know is, did they restore that ending song with Gerard Way that was only in Japan? So can I get this song on iTunes yet, or Spotify?
That I'm uncertain, but it's the one where Cloud is riding on the motorcycle through like Hawaii, right? Yeah.
Sure, it's Hawaii. I don't know. It's a banger-ass song. It has Gerard Way. I can't remember the name of the other singer, but it's fantastic, and it's never been like on any.
A Gact thing, was it? That was not Gact.
I hope not.
No, there was a Gerard Way, I think, in the original release, but I believe that there was some Gact shenanigans in the Japanese version. But hey, Gact dropped a banger in Dirge of Cerberus, so the best thing about that game is the Gact song.
So go ahead.
Kyosuke Himuro is the other person involved with Gerard Way. There we go. This is really important that we get this right. I know you're all here for Rebirth, but we need to make sure we get the Advent Children Gerard Way song right.
It's a great song. Go get it if you can, or listen to it.
It's called Cloud Smiles, I think, or something like that. I don't know.
Can't remember what it's called.
Returning to Rebirth for a second, I think the thing that hits at me. So I've thought about this a lot. I was playing 5 recently. we did the Final Fantasy IX Pantheon, which you should go check out. And it struck me how older Final Fantasies felt so big. There was so much to do in them, so many cool mini games. It always felt like it was straining against the confines of the RPG genre with all of the different things that it would try to incorporate, and 7 most of all. So playing Rebirth and once again having so many Easter eggs, so many quests, so many dumb but actually really well done mini games, and I haven't even gotten to Queen's Blood, which, by the way, Queen's Blood retroactively puts Final Fantasy VIII back in the pantheon for me because it's just that good. But we'll get to that in a sec. But it just feels great to be playing a Final Fantasy that feels expansive and not kind of linear, honestly. Because 15, that was ostensibly an open world. It felt weirdly small. And 16 and 13 are also both very straightforward. And Rebirth feels huge.
I think this game really made me re-examine the way that I looked at 16, because I still love 16 for things that it did that I really liked. But I think even back then, back then, it was like half a year ago. But I think even then, one of my main takeaways was that all of the open world, and not just open world in terms of like being able to explore and do things the way that you can do the intel and the combat fights in Rebirth, but just having like stories happening around you, having things happen around you. This game is fun. And I don't mean like, oh, it's a fun game, 10 out of 10, like 1990s video game review type thing. I mean, like, there are jokes. They do not take themselves too seriously with Rebirth in the way that I think 16 took itself a little too seriously. And I'm just amazed by the ways at which they have really captured what feels like that old Final Fantasy vibe here. Like there was an era where Final Fantasy had jokes like this. One of my favorite Final Fantasies, Final Fantasy X, has a Macarena joke in it.
Oh God.
That's like there's almost a silliness to it that exists and is allowed to just like be there without worrying that it's going to overshadow the seriousness of the story. So yeah, I'm really
doesn't FF5 have 90s action movie references and things like that?
I think Gilgamesh says it's Morphin Time.
It's like there's a Morphin Time reference. It's part and parcel of the Final Fantasy experience that one way or another it mixes drama and humor. And I think Rebirth has multiple laugh out loud moments that also managed to not detract from the overall experience. I think the strength of this and Remake, honestly, is they did the characters so well. The English voice acting is so good. The animation, they're just fun to hang out with. And having the whole gang, I love having Red 13. I love having Yuffie. I love Red. It feels great. Red 13 is great. He's awesome.
It feels like every single character is kind of like they could be the star in their own video game standalone, like mechanically wise. Like each character gets their time to shine in the spotlight story wise 100%, but mechanically everyone's so fun to use. Tifa is straight up a beat 'em up character. Barrett is like a tanky, almost it feels like an RTS character where you were hanging back and kind of just supporting people with
more
spells.
Final Fantasy 12 like where everybody's doing their thing and you're hanging back and shooting. Yeah.
Yuffie is secretly another AAA game entirely unto her own, and Red 13 and Kate Sith or Kachi. I still refuse Kate Sith.
It's officially Kate Sith.
I don't know why they did that.
I refuse.
He has a Scottish accent.
Exactly.
Why would it be
so
Kate
good
Sith?
In this game?
He is good.
Yeah, I think my favorite character of the FF7 cast now, oddly enough, is Red 13 because of this game. But
fun to use too.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how much I walked away from this being like, I actually like Kate Sith as a character now. Did not expect that. Like everyone is so well performed, well realized that yes, like I walked away being like, I love this cast. This is a fantastic cast, and they really like did good work in getting across why this cast has stood the test of time, in ways that like I almost wish other really solid older RPG casts could get this kind of treatment, like this incredible renders, like amazing voice acting across the board, all these different character moments that happen, so much time spent on each one of their individual stories that it's something I feel like we haven't, again, to compare to 16. 16 did not have that like party dynamic in it. 16 was very much like Clive's story, and here this is like the party's story, and you can really feel that.
I don't even feel annoyed when the perspective changed. They changed the perspective a lot. They're like, okay, now Barrett and Red 13 are together, which, by the way, one of the most obnoxious sequences in the early part of the game. This game can get annoying. Now Aerith and Tifa and Red 13 are together. Like, they mix it up, and in other Final Fantasies, I've been annoyed because I'll be like, well, I have my party comp. Please, like, can I go back to it? But this time I'm like, oh, like, what are these guys up to? Like, I like seeing the full range because I don't feel like there's a weak link in the party at all.
It also alleviates the trepidation I always have when a game asks me to form a party. And I'm like, but this person's really cool, but I've been leveling this person.
Yeah.
I love that when you are traveling the overworld in this game, that you have your main party composition of 3, but everyone is traveling with you. So it never feels like they're removed from the story. And they even kind of chip in during battle. So even if Aerith isn't in your party, she'll fling like one of her basic attacks at random, as will Red 13 or Barrett. They'll pepper enemies from afar. So it feels like they're not video gamified, removed from the game. They're simply just there and a little bit more passive. But I love that sort of thing. It's so cool.
What do we think of the progression in this game? Because it's interesting, right? Like, right from the start, you have this whole progression system that reminds me a little bit of the sphere grid from Final Fantasy X.
Yeah.
And you are unlocking abilities that have elemental attacks that do not use MP. And in a way, it almost makes fire and ice and lightning materia feel almost obsolete. Like, what do you think about that?
I don't feel... Oh, go ahead, Eric.
No, you go. You go.
I don't feel like it made it obsolete. I feel like the materia was definitely stronger. But if you needed to pressure an enemy, you would have the options with the attacks that don't take up MP. I feel like, for some reason, I don't understand why, I could never get the hang of Remake's battle system quite the way I was supposed to. I always felt like I was doing something wrong. I feel like they did something to really tweak the battle system in Rebirth to make it way, way more fun to use. And I don't really know the mechanics of what they changed, if you guys want to kind of walk me through that a bit.
Well,
the sphere grid's a big one.
Yeah,
the
true.
sphere grid, is it... I don't know. I felt like I kept going back to it and being like, oh, I'll put points in here. But a lot of them were really like, you do % more damage on this attack, or you get 200 HP, which I was already getting from an HP materia.
Or you unlock another synergy attack.
The synergy is where that stuff is really useful. Yeah.
I never figured out how to use the synergy attacks. Like, what do you do to make them actually work?
So it's like slightly complicated. I feel like they don't explain it well enough, or at least like it didn't stick with me the first time. But there are like 2 different synergy attacks in this game. So there are normal synergy attacks. I forget what the actual nomenclature is, but when you hold R1, you'll get kind of these different actions that you can do that are all like, one of them is Tifa can like leap backwards and Cloud can like throw her up into the air, so you immediately start in the air. So if you want to do like an airborne combo, or there's an airborne enemy that you want to hit and Tifa is like having trouble like hitting them up from the ground, you can do that to like kickstart that. And then there are other ones that are like blocking or dodging or countering. Like, there's a lot of ones that characters can do with each other, and those you can do anytime, whenever, as long as those characters are on the field.
Those are synergy skills.
Yeah, synergy skills. The big synergy attacks are as you expend ATB on arts. So either weapon abilities or spells, I think, can also count towards it.
Yeah.
That will build up these little bars, those little pips that you see. And once you have enough of them, you can expend them on an ability to do a big attack that also has some sort of effect on it. And usually that effect is either you get 3 ATB bars instead of 2. You do a bunch of stagger, or you get like unlimited MP was the other one that I ran into a lot. And those are just kind of like big attacks where they team up and do something cool, like Kate Sith shoots a giant Aerith laser out of his mouth, or like Tifa and Red 13 team up for this big like barrage of attacks. Those are really, really cool. I also found them really, really difficult to use at times because I think my biggest complaint with Rebirth's combat is the way the stagger bar works. There were so many times where I would get somebody into stagger and I'd be trying to queue up these attacks, or I'd hit like a limit or a synergy attack and they'd be in this big elaborate animation. It's sick. I love it. They're like charging up and they're like, it's go time. Let's get them. And while they're doing this big like charge up and all that, I'm watching the stagger bar just run all the way down because it doesn't freeze it while they're doing the animation. Yeah. And so like they're about to punch them and then it's like stagger over and then it hits them and it does like no damage. And I'm like,
Limit breaks are a lot better in that regard for sure.
I think that's where I really love the combat system in this one, because I think like its open world areas, I think all of the systems work together to get you to explore other aspects of the systems that you might not have too much experience with. So even if you only want to focus on doing on side quests in the open world, I think by nature of that, the game always points you to basically do everything, and then before you blink and it's like, oh, I 100% in an area. So too does the combat do that, where I think all of the systems work together. Like I think it's because they reworked a little bit the way the stagger system works. Sure, you can still exploit an enemy weakness via a spell, but I've noticed in this game there's a lot more enemies that have like action cues that you need to pay attention to, where you can like break an enemy's jaw. You got to wait for them to use a certain attack or attack them from a certain direction. And so by doing that, I think it allows you and incentivizes you to use more abilities, use more or weapon abilities, use more skills, and use more synergy skills so that you can experience everything the game has to offer in order to take advantage of that. And in doing that, you get those synergy pips that allow you to pull off the Chrono Trigger like duel techniques, which again, every game needs Chrono Trigger duel techniques. I think that is the coolest thing in the world.
I agree.
And why I think the synergy abilities, because of those are the big flashy ones, are so special to me, is I think it harkens back to the original Final Fantasy VII. I think that game was known for, when I was a kid, I played Final Fantasy VII to see the big, beautiful, expensive cutscenes. And I think, as you get a little bit older, it's not as special anymore because you see all the graphics all the time. But I think Remake does a good job of getting those cinematic moments and transitioning seamlessly into combat. So now you are actually getting to see like, oh, wow, this feels a little more interactive. And I think Rebirth ups that further, one step further with the synergy abilities, where now, we always ask the question, why can't my character do what he did in the cutscene? Well, now you can with the synergy abilities. They're flashy, they're over the top, and I think they do a good job of kind of adding characters' personality and letting it shine in combat, like Aerith and Barrett's synergy ability, where Aerith wears Barrett's sunglasses and they kind of strike a pose and then they pummel enemy. I'm like, that's
the little
so
character
cool.
Moments.
It's so cute.
That's what make this game sing. That said, speaking of synergies, so I'm going to talk briefly about a moment that's basically at the very beginning of the game. It's the whole Nibelheim sequence. So if you want to fast forward like 5 minutes and you don't want to hear me talk about this, it's fine. But this is the very beginning of the game. The Nibelheim sequence, I love in the original Final Fantasy VII. I think it's awesome because it establishes Sephiroth as this force to be reckoned with. You're terrified of him. He's so strong. He can do level 3 magic attacks, all that. And Cloud looks like little guy next to him.
Yeah, he's just
kind of in awe of him.
A puppy, I believe is the phrase.
Such a
the original
puppy.
FF7 does so much. Like you just find his sword in President Shinra. You see him in the flashbacks. You find the serpent that's kind of strong, and it just has a sword through it. And you're like, geez, look at Sephiroth's kind of a... And Rebirth shows too much. And necessarily lessens Sephiroth's impact IMO, especially during the Nibelheim sequence, and I know why they did it, but it just didn't hit as hard having Cloud and Sephiroth doing synergy attacks and in effect being sort of similar power levels. I'm like,
Yeah, it feels like they retconned that.
You lose the great moment, IMO.
I know what you mean because I've agreed with you, and I've said that one of my favorite moments in any video game is when you see that cutscene with the dragon in the rain, and just like that's such a holy shit moment for RPGs at the time because we've been like stuck with 16-bit side by side, battles, and to see this kind of cinematic sweep of the camera as this huge polygon dragon taking up the whole screen, and as you say, Cloud's a little guy. And he just gets bodied if the dragon even looks at him. But Sephiroth, like, just one swipe of that big ass sword and it's dead. And you're like, holy shit! Now I gotta face this guy. That's quite intimidating.
Maybe it's because I was playing as Sephiroth in that section that like Cloud was constantly in trouble and I was having to bail him out, and that felt a little bit more
That's fair.
Like, in fiction. But that might be mileage varying.
I completely agree with you, Eric, and I think the Cat raises a good point because I think this is a direct cause of splitting Final Fantasy VII into 3 separate games. Whereas in Remake, we got that. Wait, Sephiroth, he's like crazy. He's like everyone loves him. He's the world's greatest soldier. And they do a lot of talking up the bad guy, which I always appreciate until you finally see him in action. He has his big moments. I think Remake doesn't do a particularly good job of that because you see Sephiroth right from the beginning.
Yeah.
But that momentum from Remake carried forward into Rebirth. I think you do have an entire game's worth of seeing Sephiroth teased and talked about, but the problem is Remake ends with a boss fight against Sephiroth, and then Rebirth begins where you get to see Sephiroth in action. So I see where Cat's coming from, but I think what Rebirth does a good job of doing is it allows you to experience that power level difference by letting you play Sephiroth, to Eric's point, where I think that Cloud was always in trouble when you were in the Nibelheim section, and Sephiroth is just bodying dudes left and right, especially with like his hell cleaver or guillotine or whatever it's called.
They turned it into a whole ass dungeon.
Yeah,
okay?
they turned it into a whole dungeon.
The flashback lasts too long, and that's just my biggest criticism of Rebirth. Is they're like, well, we have to turn this very excellent little sequence from Final Fantasy VII into a whole playable thing, and that just kind of changes the atmosphere. And Nadia was saying earlier, you and Nadia were saying like Final Fantasy VII nails atmosphere, and that's my biggest problem with Remake and Rebirth.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I agree with you there that like the expanding of some parts gets a little much, and it hit for me during that same demo / Nibelheim section where you're doing the crawl on the ground. It's like R2, L2.
Yeah.
And okay, look, game designers, please, can we like come here, let's talk. I don't like doing those.
This is such a modern. The cloud crawling sequence is stupid. It's stupid. I'm sorry.
Just make it a cutscene. Just make it. I'm not playing anyway. Just make it a cutscene. Or the world.
Anytime this game tries to become Uncharted, it gets really cringy.
Oh, the climbing. We do need to talk real quick. The climbing in this game is a little goofy at times. Like it doesn't always like hitch like line up right. It's not very smooth. And yeah, it was a symptom of like there was a lot of what I like to call third person prestige just like seeping into here at times, when I think sometimes I was cool with it and other times I was like, pull back, like we don't need that. The R2 L2 thing I almost feel like was, well, we need to have haptics in this game somewhere. So
sense.
Yeah.
Haptics do nothing for me. You know what it feels like? I'm like, oh good, my triggers got mushy now.
Yeah. I hate the feeling.
Time to break.
And you feel like going, and I'm like, this is nothing. This is not adding to it. It's just being annoying.
One thing I do really like about the Nibelheim sequence and a lot of this game, and it's I think the first time I've ever really noticed this in a big quadruple A budget video game, and maybe I'm just not looking for it in other games, but I think that there's a lot of subtlety and a lot of the graphical emotion on people's faces in this game.
Yeah,
And I
very
think
good.
that like Sephiroth in Nibelheim,
Mhm.
I thought he was astounding with a lot of his micro expressions and a lot of body language stuff that I think also, if you're studying Cloud throughout this game, it tells
Yes,
you a lot about what's
it
going
does.
on in Cloud's head if you are looking at his body language and reading his expressions. And I don't
I
think I've
love
ever
that.
noticed that really in a game before, other than like The Last of Us Part 2, where they clearly spent a lot of money trying to nail human expression. This game knocks it out of the park.
I agree. Yeah, that's I noticed that when I first played. Like, I went to play a preview build of the game, and I noticed that about Cloud, and I was like, that's a really good detail. That's really good attention.
I think you can really tell at times that this game is very much about Cloud and Aerith, because I feel like they're the ones that jump out at me when I think of that, like their expressions. But I also want to give a shout out to the Barrett stuff in this game. Hits
Oh, I
very
love
hard
Barrett.
and is done very well. And we've already said that like all the voice acting and stuff is incredible, but like the mocap, the voice acting for a lot of the Barrett stuff in particular, very, very strong. I'm just, again, floored by how much love went into not just recreating these characters, but like breathing some new life into them and giving these moments that were like small pieces much larger, much more dramatic moments. I think in those cases I can excuse the excess because I think it works. It gets those characters across so much better. It's really emotional to see some of these moments play out in front of you with so much more detail. Whereas, yeah, when it's suddenly like, oh, we turned this thing that was like kind of a tiny area into a whole dungeon, you're like, did we need to? Did we have to?
Yeah. I think it is a cliche to say this, but this game is genuinely a labor of love among the development team. And I think I talked about this when we were doing our preview episode, the 2024 preview episode. I said, I am excited about Rebirth because it is evident that the development team, Final Fantasy VII means a lot to them, and they
Yes,
want to
absolutely.
do right by this series while also trying to refresh it. You've heard me complain about remakes, like the creative decisions they made with this, but I will say that it is cool going in and not knowing how Rebirth is going to end.
Yeah.
It does add a lot of tension, and it made me like very keen to see what's going to happen in this one. That's cool. That is
I
cool.
agree.
And the amount of detail and how deep they go in, all the mini games, just people call it the kitchen sink game. It is absolutely the kitchen sink game.
I found a real deep cut of lore in the game the other day, and I can't say what it is, but it made me laugh because it's just something that Nick will get it, but beyond that, and I don't know.
I think if we're going to talk about the kitchen sink before we're done talking about Rebirth, we have to talk about Queen's Blood. Queen's Blood is awesome. I want Queen's Blood as a like standalone phone app like yesterday.
I don't like Gwent. I don't like a lot of in-game card games. I don't think that they're that entertaining. Queen's Blood is simple, understandable, but deep. The positioning of the cards, really, really, really good. I once I got it, I kind of became obsessed with it.
I finished the
devoured
entire
it.
thing. Yeah, did you do the whole quest, Nick?
Oh yeah.
The end of that
I love
quest
the
line is so
players.
much fun. It is. Oh,
Again, not getting into spoilers here, but that side quest,
so
the for those unfamiliar, the new Queen's Blood card game has its own dedicated story mode, basically. It is not entirely dissimilar from a recent AAA game that came out maybe 6 months ago. But there's some really interesting stuff in it. But I think the allure, Kat said it's simple. By the time you get to the end of the game, it looks like a fundamentally different kind of card game, but it's easy to get
because you keep unlocking cards that keep changing. Like you're initially like, okay, I'm gonna just put this card. I just need to advance toward the middle. That's fine. And then you can start removing cards from the field. You can start buffing cards.
Yeah.
Different cards have different. They affect different spaces.
Yeah.
You can find unique and clever ways to block people. It feels like you can build really intriguing decks. I'm actually floored by how deep and interesting this game
It's basically
is.
like they took Marvel Snap and added so much to it.
Yeah, that's a great observation.
I love the like how tactile it still feels, that they're like,
Yes.
even though like the things that are happening are very like digital card game, you're operating within these bounds that are very like, you're not just playing poker or whatever, but you're like putting things down that are making things pop up and all that. But it still feels like you've got these like chips and pawns and tokens on the board that you're putting down. There's like a good every time you put a card down. I don't know, like they just really mastered the feel of playing a card game, and then they
Feels
made
like you're playing like a high quality set almost.
yeah, and then like the focus on the playing field and controlling the playing field and manipulating it, like it's just the right size for you to kind of have a grasp of the breadth of what you're working with, but then do so much with it there. I love that you mentioned the enfeebling and the removing cat, because when I was getting near the end of the Queen's Blood stuff, they start throwing these puzzles at you that are basically like chess puzzles, but with Queen's Blood cards. And I was doing an entire one where I had to figure out ways to enfeeble my own cards to trigger their abilities to affect other cards on the other side of the board. And it was this really intricate puzzle where I was just sitting there and like, okay, if I do this and then that and then this, but no, I need this to trigger first, so this has to go here. And I like Triple Triad a lot. Like I'm a noted Triple Triad sicko. The dropouts know. But,
Yes.
I think Triple Triad is mostly just playing math at the end of the day, and you're just trying to like maximize like what numbers can sit where. I think Queen's Blood, the way it uses positioning, the way it uses different effects, like if-then statements, is so clever and so smart and works so well that I would seriously just beg Square to find a way to make a standalone version of this where we could PvP or just release more content for it, because I would play more of it. I know that was like the way that Gwent went when it took off, and then obviously like Gwent is not as popular now as it used to be, and so maybe this is a case of like a concentrated amount is a good thing, maybe like a lot of it is not. But I would really love to just see more of this because I really loved it. It was fantastic.
I really like that all the decks you can make in the game are viable, as like they whatever your play style is, the game will accommodate you and allow you to play that play style even towards the end game, where I feel like a lot of times in card game side quest things, there's usually one deck that is clearly better than the rest of them, and I don't really feel that way with any of the decks that are present here. It feels more like Magic the Gathering in that regard, where a lot of decks feel like no, you can make this work if you want to. But to your little chess puzzle challenges that they inject halfway through the game, it's such a smart way of just showing you you've been playing one way, and we've only allowed you to play one way. But this is your opportunity to learn there's other decks you can make and see which one you like, because you're gonna need to change things up pretty soon, buddy. And I think the game does a good job of kind of tutorializing it without feeling like you're being talked down to. It feels good to pull off the chains.
I had no idea what I was doing until I realized what it meant to have a 1 versus a 2 versus a 3 on there, and how to build up your board properly, because I was kind of flailing for a little bit. Yeah. Well, once I started to get that, I was like, oh, okay, like this makes a lot more sense. So,
and I think
Go ahead, Eric.
No, you're good. You're good.
Oh no, just to Kat and Eric's point of just I wish Queen's Blood could get its own standalone game. I kind of want this game to have like its what was that Yoko Taro card game that made
Voice
like
of Cards? Let's
Voice
go.
of Cards.
Yeah.
I feel like putting Queen's Blood in a Voice of Cards style narrative would work so well.
That'd be fun.
And
I would play the heck out of a Queen's Blood standalone game. I really would.
See that. The
similar
thing I was just
similar
say,
tone.
Yeah, the thing I was gonna say is just that like even we talk about all these strategies and things that you can do, but I still would like lose or win just based off of how well I could play Queen's Blood, and I think that is like the hallmark of it being an interesting and fun game, is that end of day, even if you've got a deck full of legendaries and incredible cards that you've built up through side quest. I also love that you can get cards through doing like non Queen's Blood things like side quests and stuff. I love that in games. I don't know why, but I do.
Yeah.
But I could have the best deck, but if I play it wrong, if I pilot it wrong, it can still lose. And that is
Absolutely.
like a
Yeah.
really good hallmark of a well-designed card game.
I just
Um,
wish, like Triple Triad, you could take a card that is like vital to your deck. I wish you could destroy the card in order to get something for the actual main game stuff, because I think that would cause an interesting dilemma of like, oh man, I can get so many crafting materials if I get rid of this one card, a la Triple
Scrap
Triad,
this
but
card.
I don't know if I have the will to do it. So I think that would be cool, but I'm kind of glad they didn't do it.
So Drew was wondering in the chat what we thought of the crafting in this game. So when you are running through and playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, you do collect a lot of materials a lot of time, and it starts to come into play specifically in the open world section. So folks like Nick and Eric who got further than I did, what do you think of the crafting?
I think it is a weird thing to talk about because at times I felt it was absolutely necessary, especially when we're talking about end game like equipment, getting some of the best materia holders that you can and all that. Like there are a lot of ways, even at the end of the game, I was going like, oh, I didn't realize that you could upgrade certain pieces of accessories to make them have even better stats. So now this thing that gave me health will also give me strength and things like that. And that's really important and core to keeping up with the power curve of this game. But other times it kind of just felt like a way for me to have a steady stream of potions that wasn't, that weren't bought at store. Honestly, I have so many items in this game. I'm never out of items. And I like it because I think items feel more impactful in this game because they give you so many materia that are like the item economizer materia is one of the best materia in this game. It lets you just use an item without using up an ATB. And it has like a certain number of like, you have to then use 3 items to recharge it, but that, as it levels up, it like takes less items to recharge. It's brilliant. It's perfect. And you get so many potions and stuff in this game that you should just be using that all the time. But it also means that there's just a lot of, I was menuing a lot in this game, I feel. And not like constantly, but when I needed to menu, it would be a solid, like I sit down and like, okay, I need to go through and I'm going to do all of my transmuting and I'm going to build my to-do lists. So that way I can level up my crafting stuff. And then I can go over here and go to my weapon and like organize all this. And I think the crafting is honestly pretty just mundane, like, and not in a bad way. It's just there. It's a thing you do if you're like, oh, I only have like 3 mega potions on me. I should probably have more mega potions on me. I'm going to go craft a bunch in my inventory real quick. Or I just found a transmuter chip out in the open world and it lets me craft a new accessory. So I'm going to go craft that so I can bump my crafting level up. But it's not like end all be all. It just makes your life easier. And so
Another
maybe,
example of the kitchen sink approach to
yeah,
this game. Where they're like, well, we got to have crafting. What's a game without crafting? Got to have crafting.
To me, it kind of felt tacked on. It kind of felt like not really a notable addition, other than I like when you get to craft accessories with it, or improve accessories, or improve existing armors. And I wonder if, because this game iterated on Remake, it kind of eliminated some of the pain in the ass stuff in Remake, a la weapon cores. Because those things were not fun to go into the menu for and upgrade. And I think they did a good job of eliminating that, but taking its soul and bringing it into this new game. But where I think where whatever lies ahead for this trilogy, I want them to take the item transmutation and the weapon upgrade side of this game and have those a little more closely interlinked so that you can craft upgrades for your weapons as opposed to just arbitrarily leveling up your weapons and selecting things that suit your playstyle. I think that would be a more interesting use of the crafting system, having it more tied to your playstyle as opposed to just supplementing it.
Yeah, I honestly feel like... Go ahead, Nadia, sorry.
The thing I liked about the crafting, though, is that it emphasizes crafting things that you can use on multiple party members at once. Like, the mist potions, the mist echo screens, whatever, the mist high potions. Those saved my ass more than once, because in in this game, I find it's much easier to run out of MP at crucial moments than any other Final Fantasy game I've ever played. You can get MP up materia and HP up materia, and you're obviously meant to use them, but you do have to manage what you're doing. And I'm always paranoid about potions and stuff like that. Like, oh, it only heals one person. Why should I bother? Oh, I'm going to use them all up. But here it's like I have control over my own supply, which makes me sound like a drug dealer. And I like that a lot. And I like the fact that you can just heal everyone at once if necessary. And it's still not something you can spam because you got to have the ATB to do it unless you have the item economizer going on.
Nadia, don't use the product.
The second they added the mist potion, which the mist high potion and like giga potions, I was like, are they allowed to add new potion types in this game? That's crazy.
There's a giga
totally legal.
A potion that heals you and also heals your MP, is that allowed? Oh my god, how did we live before? This is great.
The crafting stuff is just very there. I mean, it's like a lot of stuff in this game. It's just kind of there, and it's useful. I would definitely tell people to make use of it throughout the game, especially if you're doing all of the side content stuff, because you'll get a lot of stuff for it. But I do think part of the kitchen sink approach is that it does make a lot of that stuff. It all ties together really well, but then none of it ever goes like too deep. And I think it's better that way, because I would prefer it that way versus like, well, you're losing in this boss right now because you really should have gone back and gotten the transmuter chip from that previous area to craft this one thing. Instead, you get like really cool rewards. Like, I like a lot of the stuff that you get from finishing, quote unquote, an area. Like, a lot of areas have signature monsters that you unlock through doing side quests that then give you a material that you can craft into a cool accessory, and that feels really cool, almost like Monster Hunter-y. And I like the feeling of, oh, I got this really sick accessory because I did all this stuff back in that area 2 regions ago, and now Aerith is walking around with this like monster charm on her that like gives her super sick stats because I did all that stuff. It feels really rewarding in that sense, but that's kind of rare that it happens, and I'm glad it just pops up every now and then. It's not like the focus of the game.
Yeah, it's nice to play a Final Fantasy that feels fleshed out for a change in the way that it handles its side quests and special monsters and such. It makes me think of 15, how you had a whole behemoth side quests that felt really neat, and then it never has anything that cool again. Like, they're like, we have this concept, we're gonna do it once, and anyway, you're just gonna fight some random monsters on the field now. But I suppose
I was just going to say the special monster fights in this game are really, really good, and I highly encourage y'all to seek them out. They're really fun. The one in
Chadley has do Chadley stuff. It's worth it, especially tutorials. You get good stuff for doing them.
The Chadley stuff's kicked my butt, I have to say. But okay, the last thing I want to hit, and again, let's try and keep this like relatively non-spoilery. There's a relationship system in this game with everybody. And basically, based on the dialogue choices that you can make and everything, you can build up your relationship with them. It does impact like a romantic element of it. Already, you can see on Twitter the Team Aerith versus Team Yuffie versus Team Tifa. Tifa, interestingly enough, firmly in the lead. I am Team Yuffie myself. And I'm just like, how do we feel about this? Obviously, in the original Final Fantasy VII, you had a relationship system that was mostly unseen. Like, depending on your choices, you'd get points effectively behind the scenes. And, stuff like, did you buy a flower from Aerith? That's a point. That kind of thing. And you had to work really hard not to go on a date with Aerith in that game. I was always like, I want to go on a date with Barrett. I want to go on a date with Barrett. But how do we feel about the Rebirth relationship system?
I think it's really funny because I pissed Yuffie off so bad.
Oh no! How could you do that, Nadia? My girl.
She asked me a question. I won't say what, and I just one of the answers was just nope. Just simple NONP period. Nope. And I said that, and she got so mad. It specifically said like, to paraphrase, like, Yuffie did not like that, and it's just like dropped.
Yuffie will remember that.
Yuffie will remember that.
Romance is an interesting thing for me because I think I've said this before. I don't know if this qualifies as a spoiler or not, but I think this game firmly believes in the Cloud Aerith Tifa thruple
Oh yes, it sure
theory.
does.
There is so much fodder for all of you out there that I think you will not be left wanting, no matter what side of that paradigm you are on. But I also feel like the relationship stuff is just kind of fun and there and interesting. I also don't think it plays into that much outside of like one or two scenes in this game. Like by the time I rolled credits, I was like, how much did that stuff really play in? There's like a couple things that it changes, but I think it's more interesting in terms of it like just giving you moments of panic where you are talking to
Yeah.
Tifa. Tifa's like, what do you think? And you're like, oh god, I have like 10 seconds to say the right thing. And it's good for that, and it's good for like character building stuff. It's also not anything that you can like permanently ruin, as far as I can tell. It's just
No.
kind of a fun mechanic to add to the deepening party relationships that are happening.
Yeah, I think it's a fun way of gamifying a mechanic that was hidden in the previous game, and I think it's a good opportunity to, again, it just continues to go back. Anytime you have a chance to let your wonderful cast of characters shine, whether it be romantically or non-romantically, I think it's wonderful because, you know, you can build up your relationships with Barrett, Red 13, everybody, and it's not all designed around the will they, won't they. There's just an opportunity to get their perspective on something, which I think is really, really neat. Yeah, I do like that panic of, me if I was actually
Be
talking
funny.
to Tifa. Oh, I have 10 seconds. What do I say?
Yeah.
But that's
It's
fun.
funny that we're playing Sakura Tyson because it's a very similar kind of situation in that game where it's like, oh crap, I can't read this fast. Oh no, I hit the wrong thing. Sakura's mad at me now.
Oh no,
It's a
it said
pretty
you smell like
similar
an elephant's butt.
dialogue system, right? It's a pretty similar dialogue system.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it shows how influential Tokimeki and those kinds of games were back in the day, like to this day. So, yeah.
I do like that this game, apart from like the shipping wars that are happening as we speak, I do actually like that this game adds like a wonderful relationship between Tifa and Aerith, like as just there in the game. I think that's awesome.
They're just gals
And it-
being dudes.
I was about to say
better
our
than this.
entire chat is lighting up right now. Like, forget like Team Tifa or Team Aerith. It's Team Tifa and Aerith. Like, just let them be together. And
Yeah, let
I love
Tifa
that.
and Aerith go to dinner. Says
Yeah.
The thing was like, people were like, Aerith or Tifa. I'm like, don't make me choose between my girls. They're just having a great time together all the time.
There is so much
All the time.
Aerith Tifa content in this game, and I am so happy for everyone who like wants that, because you're gonna eat so well in Rebirth. It's incredible.
Okay.
People were saying Jessie was too powerful, so they had to get rid of her in the first game.
Okay, we've been talking for about an hour about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Obviously, there's going to be so much more to discuss, but final thoughts for now before we move on to the next section. I'll start with you, Nadia. How do you Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Where you
basically-
at?
Well, right now I'm kind of wishing I was playing it. To be honest with you.
Me too.
So yeah, there's my opinion. Great game. It was actually probably better than I thought it was going to be, because I did enjoy Remake a lot, but I felt like it was lacking in certain areas. I mentioned the battle system just did not click with me the way it clicked with others. I feel like Rebirth, it has so many moments that's just like where it's just I'm very cynical about nostalgia and stuff like that. So if you try to pander to me, I might bite back. But they do it so expertly here, along with all like a whole bunch of new stuff, and they kind of mix it all in really well that I can't resist. So yeah, I'm having a great time.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I have rolled credits on Rebirth. I think I really, really enjoyed it. As I said on social media, I enjoyed it with an asterisk, and I think any amount of talking about this game has to have that asterisk, because like we've talked about a lot of stuff here, and there's obviously like story stuff to talk about down the line, and we'll do that at some point when the statute of limitations has fallen off far enough that we can have that discussion. But I broadly just really enjoyed this game. I think I was the most surprised by, like I said, the open world stuff just got me in a way that I haven't been got by that stuff in a while. This is absolutely just like catnip for Final Fantasy fans, I think. If you are someone who is nostalgic about Final Fantasy FF7 or just the series at large, it is that. It is just like constant good vibes, good things happening, stuff to do, mini games everywhere. We didn't even talk about Red 13 Rocket League, which is
Oh,
I love that.
crazy? That's so stupid. I loved it.
But it's there's so much happening in this game that it just feels like you're going on a road trip with friends on like the summer. P5 Strikers kind of tried to do this vibe where it was like you're on a summer road trip with your friends, like learning all kinds of stuff and hanging out with each other. And this is like P5 Strikers but Final Fantasy VII, where it's just you're hanging out with the party, you're doing stuff. There is a plot, ostensibly it happens at times, but my favorite memories of this game are definitely the almost summer road trip vibes of just going through this world and doing all these things and hanging out and getting into all kinds of hijinks. Like it is a good vibes game, and I really, really like it for that.
A good vibes game. Vibes top tier in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Nick, what do you think of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth having rolled credits?
Agreed. It is a great hang game, which Square doesn't always make great hanging games, and I think this is definitely one of them. But ultimately, I really like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think I'm still wrestling with a lot of the events that happen in the game, and I'm going to be thinking about them for a long time, which I think says something about what happens over the course of Rebirth. As to the things I don't like, I think I don't really know how to distill it down to there's a lot of little things, death by 1,000 cuts, that again isn't death. It's just something nitpicky that for the sake it stands out in a game that is ultimately remarkable to me. And I don't know how to liken it to anything other than, you know how there's that discourse around the yellow climbing things.
Oh yeah.
It's less about the visibility and more so about how slow it is and how clumsy it is to often navigate for no real reason. And I think that's my big criticism of Rebirth. Is a lot of my issues with the game are the yellow stairsification of everything, where it's just like kind of a minor nuisance, but it adds up to be kind of an overall nuisance after a while, where it's just like, why are you impeding my progress? There's no reason. You could cut this fluff out right here and I would be streaming through it, and I'd have such a great time, whether it be the form of mini games. Not all of them are created equal. And but ultimately, I really like it, and I think it is a marked improvement. And I didn't know how they would be able to evolve from Remake, and it makes me very excited to see what will happen in the third game. Like mechanically, like how do you evolve something that I think feels pretty darn good combat wise? So I'm curious to see where they go with it next.
Yeah, I really like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think I've been the harshest on Remake, but this feels like the remake. This feels like the real Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake was a prelude in so many ways. That said, yes, there are many annoying AAA. The AAA-ification of Final Fantasy VII is evident, and when it tries to be Naughty Dog, I don't think it altogether works. It can feel a little contrived in that respect. It's at its absolute best when it is very much itself, when the party is given an opportunity to shine, when you're just out there vibing, having a good time. Honestly, I enjoy being around Cloud and Aerith and Tifa and Barrett and Red 13 and Yuffie and all of them so much. It feels so good to have a much bigger cast in this one for the most part. It's beautiful. Like technically speaking, it may not be at the highest tier, but I think that it does a lot of the touches work really well. The pure sheer number of handcrafted assets is a little bit funny to me, and the very bespoke and sometimes very slow animations where they're like, you are going to very, very slowly push this button because you have to see Cloud do the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, okay. Chill out, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But the combat's great. Often it gets my like heart racing and everything. And I'm at this point now where I have just kind of accepted that Final Fantasy VII is its own thing, and this trilogy that Square is crafting as its own thing entirely. And I don't entirely agree with all of the creative decisions that have been made around the story, but I'm also the kind of person that can sort of forgive that if I'm just having a great time overall. So strongly recommend, even if you haven't played Remake. Honestly, I think it's going to be. I think that is one of the best Final Fantasy experiences that I've had in quite a while. At this point, like Final Fantasy it's felt just kind of down in the dumps outside of 14. So it feels great to have it.
I like 16.
Outside of no, I'm not going to defend 16. I'm just not.
I like it.
It's not good. I'm sorry.
I haven't played it, but I hear it's pretty good. I mean, it's not the best, but it's perfectly
that
great.
Combat was so good.
It is the most. I mean, I'm sorry, but it is a perfectly okay 7 out of 10. But like, it certainly was not at the hype level you wanted from a Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth feels like a real unqualified win for the series that they haven't had in a while outside of 14. Just saying.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay. What do you think of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? Well, you should let us know when it comes out on February 29th. And don't worry, we'll be talking lots more about it when it is here, because come on, we're all Final Fantasy junkies around here. We love it. All right. That's it for our Final Fantasy VII Rebirth review conversation, and it's time now for a series of random encounters. Pentiment is now on the Nintendo Switch. It was announced during a Nintendo Direct where, among other things, Mother 3 was released on the Switch in Japan.
Man, that's so amazing.
In Japan.
What a troll.
Nintendo did the funniest thing it could have.
And then I think even
Boy
Reggie
said on Mother
tweeted.
3, please talk to Nintendo.
Yeah. Reggie's like, it's not my problem anymore. Please stop.
Reggie's like, it's not my call to make. Hey, Reggie, why don't you put a link to that IGN story that you screen capped, you jerk? But we also got a Monster Hunter Stories remaster announced, which woo. So whatever. We also got Pal World has reached 25 million players. Asterian's Neil Newman is joining Fallout London, which this is an interesting decision by him. Baldur's Gate 3 cross-platform mod support is on the way. Ooh. And here's the thing. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. So that was leaked via a ratings board in Korea. It was announced during the Nintendo Direct. It was initially, people were like, is this a DLC? But now it's starting to seem like more like a kind of a royal version of SMT5. Lots of new content, a different approach to the story, for sure. And also no save carryover, LOL. But you can carry over some of your demons. You do
3 of them, only 3.
Only 3. Only 3.
Really? 3 good ones, yeah.
The 3 good ones.
It's that seems fine, I guess. I don't know. I'm so used to SMT just pulling the strangest things between proper SMT and Persona and all that like, yeah, sure. I think anybody who played Shin Megami Tensei 5, or was going to at least, has played it already, and now Vengeance is probably just trying to grab any audience it could grab. So if it gets more people to play SMT, it gets more people to play SMT.
Yeah, I like 5.
What do you think of the discourse that people are going, I don't even want to buy a base version of an Atlas game at this point because they're just going to release a Royal or whatever?
I mean, that is your choice, and I understand why someone would make that, but there is often some significant number of years between these releases, and there's usually enough of a difference that I find myself, like, at least with Royal, I like making those comparisons, and just kind of reminds me when The Stand came out, the uncut version, and my mom bought that and read it alongside the cut version because she just liked the book so much. I'm kind of like that with Atlas games, so I'll probably give it a try. I like Shin Megami Tensei 5 quite a bit, and of course it has some technical problems on the Switch, so this is my opportunity to play it the way it was meant to be played, I suppose.
I think it's a
Bit
really
of a
valid
catch.
complaint for sure. Honestly, like but at the end of the day, if you want to play P5 that bad and don't want to wait for the royal version to come out or whatever, then play P5 and otherwise like be prepared for the fact that you might have to play a 90-hour RPG twice just to see the like extra 10 hours of content that something adds.
It's a bit of a catch-22, right? Like obviously something like a Persona baseline that has enough fan momentum in the West where it's like, yeah, this will probably get an iteration on. But for stuff like Shin Megami Tensei, I'm a little more apprehensive of. I was like, I don't think if nobody buys the base version, I don't think we're gonna get an iteration on it. As for me, like whenever now I can actually play Shin Megami Tensei 5, but I do own it. I bought it because I'm like, I want these games to continue, please. I loaded it up on my Switch and I was like, I'll wait till it comes to PC. Because I'm just so over the Switch showing its age of like, unfortunately, I am a high frame rate graphics snob. I recognize that it is a sickness, but man, just the opportunity to play that game at 4K 120, I'm drooling right now. I can't wait.
I'm with you, Nick. Like one of the things with FF7, I played in performance mode. I can't deal with anything less than 60 at this point.
I'm in performance mode too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously I enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom and whatnot and just kind of accepted the Switch for what it's worth, for what it was. But if I can get to 60, I absolutely will. Okay. Also, the big piece of news from this past week, we finally got a Shadow of the Erdtree gameplay reveal. It will be out on June 21st, which is a terrible time for me because I'm going to be in Scotland for a wedding. But I look forward to playing that when it happens. Yeah, let's just drop Shadow of the Erdtree at the busiest time of the freaking gaming calendar in terms of news. Thanks for that, From Software. IGN did get to do an interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki where he broke down a lot of the info around Shadow of the Erdtree, talking about some of the characters. We know, for example, that Mikola is going to be a big part of it. He said that Melania, we're going to have more Melania-style bosses, which I can almost hear Lemmy Solo her going, in the Eurogamer interview, he talked a little bit about the idea of a Bloodborne remake. Well, he was also like, look, we don't have the IP on this one, so we have no control over Bloodborne. But
please complain to Sony.
Yeah.
Nick, I saw you perking up when I mentioned Shadow of the Erdtree. Takes, did you watch the trailer?
Oh, I woke up that day and I uncharacteristically woke up a little bit later than I normally do, and the first thing I did was grab my phone and pull up Shadow of the Erdtree trailer. I was like,
you were watching that countdown, and you're like,
what's that? Yeah. I want the Shadow of the Erdtree, and man,
you saw that little arm coming out of the cocoon. And you're like, hell yeah, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
I knew it had to be about Mikola. I knew it because there's just so much that's about Mikola in Elden Ring.
Huge part of the lore for sure.
Yeah, we don't really know a whole lot about Mikola, do we?
We know like some stuff, but it's like the biggest question mark that's left in Elden Ring.
We know that they're very dangerous, like that they can.
Well, Mikola was one of the siblings, and I think made the Halig tree, if I remember right.
Yeah,
if you went and did that area, but then was like taken by Moog, and that's where you end up. That's how you kind of get onto all those different paths of like the Halig tree and Moog's area and all that is like.
God, I hated the Halig tree.
Oh, I loved the Halig tree.
I love it.
I had it was long though.
That was one of my favorite zones in a FromSoft game, straight up. Like I loved the Halig tree, but I think it's really interesting to go to this stuff because it does potentially give them some room to explore the broader lore of like what is going on in Elden Ring, like with gods and things like that, because that was a lot of Mikola's stuff was about the influence of gods and the influence of presences on this plane of existence, and I'm excited to see them explore that.
God, I gotta refresh my lore.
See, that's my favorite part about all of this. Like this new trailer drop is just like reinvigorating and rustling my jimmies of all the lore fiends out there. Everyone's speculating about, every single frame in this brand new trailer, and it makes me so happy that people are just going all in once again. It's like Elden Ring never left. It was just lying in wait, ready to pounce. But yeah, just it feels like a lot of people now are tapping into. I think I saw somebody mention on Twitter just like leaning into what A Song of Fire and Ice people loved about Game of Thrones in general was how George R. R. Martin hid a lot of people's lineage in a lot of like subtle tells and whatnot, and it feels like a lot of people are analyzing gravestones, like who is Mesmer? Is he how he's got red hair, so that means he's tied to Radigan, and is he some sort of bastard child? He kind of where was Rykard all these years before he turned into a snake and things like that. Like
Oh,
that's the stuff
right,
that just
snake guy.
that makes me so hungry, and I
Did you
can't wait
say
to bite in.
the name? What's the name? Memzer?
Mesmer, yeah,
Fire
he seems
guy.
like he's going to be the big bad
He's
of
one of the
this
new
He's definitely a big
bosses,
part
yeah.
of the story. Yeah.
Funny, because it's actually a very bad curse in Hebrew. Not Mems. It's like Memzer is more like it, but it means bastard, like the worst kind of bastard.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Wow, a little
Like a
insight
child of
right there.
incest, that kind of bastard.
Miyazaki did say that it's going to be the biggest From Software DLC to date. It's going to be kind of twice the size of the old Hunters. The old Hunters had like 5 new bosses. This has 10.
Wow.
And it has like 8 new weapon categories. It's at least as big as Limgrave, if not quite a bit bigger, actually. So this is a big one. Like, there's a reason that it's going to have been like 2.5 years before this actually ends up being released. As always, DLC is necessarily going to be, a smaller kind of affair. Plenty of people never finish Elden Ring, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm definitely going to be playing it at a certain point.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be great to have it during the summer, especially with AAA being so unreliable in the back half of the year. So
I'm just glad Miyazaki already confirmed how you can access the DLC, because that's always the most stressful part of buying FromSoft DLC is like,
Oh,
wait,
yeah.
how do I get to it? Where do I have to stand and interact with this one thing? So that's
How
fun.
do you do it? I haven't read the interview yet.
It's through just the Mikola hand. So you go, you
Oh.
do unfortunately have to make your way through Moog's palace. So good
Haven't
luck to
done
you
that.
out there.
That was weird.
it's like endgame content anyways. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for the random encounters. We're rolling up to the tavern, settling in next to the fire. One thing we didn't mention during the random encounters is that a Unicorn Overlord demo was released. And Eric, you've been playing it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am just about out of the timer that I have on the demo, which makes me very sad. I've been poking away at it for the last couple nights. Unicorn Overlord is the latest game from Vanillaware. It is essentially Vanillaware saying, well, if no one else is going to make a new ogre battle, we're going to do it, dang it. And,
Oh yeah.
it's really something. I'm really, really into it. I've played through, I think, what feels like most of the intro area where they kind of teach you how to play the game and then let you loose into what is like kind of an open world where you can explore around and talk to characters that are on this overworld map, and then get into an area that's maybe like enemy occupied or something like that, and you go into a battle map, which is the same map, and now you're like dropping units down and moving them strategically and all that. A very, very, very ogre battle in that way. I love the gambit system, which is, or they call it something else. It's the gambit system from Final Fantasy 12, where you basically have this like if-then logic of, say we're about to go into a fight and I have my archer there, and archers can take down flyers super well. They can also take down thieves super well if they have like a true strike ability, because thieves can dodge attacks. So maybe if my dude has true strike as an ability, I want to set it as his number 1 to always use it in fights when he can, and then I want to give it a condition of like prioritize thieves, so that way he's always picking that thief off before I can do anything. And it runs down this whole list. And I was actually on the Unicorn Overlord subreddit the other day looking at someone had posted their tactics setups that they had created, and it was this beautiful, gorgeous, just like if then statements all the way down of like prioritizing, like you want to use this but only in these situations, otherwise use this. And it's weird in a way to go into, you know, those fantasy battles, you know, because units walk along and then they run into each other and then they battle and you don't do anything, you just watch them fight. But there's something really cool about setting up all those tactics and then saying go, and then just sitting there and being like, come on, do it right.
Come on, you stupid horse.
Fight. And
got $10 on you.
It's a very strategic game. It's a very interesting game that I think if you like that sort of management stuff going on, because even when you take over a region, you claim the town, now deliveries open up and you can go find resources and bring them back to like rebuild the town after all the war that has torn it apart. And now once you've rebuilt it, you can station a guard there, and that's one of your units just hangs out there and will give you resources periodically from the town. So there's all this like management and stuff going on that I think feels really, really good. And obviously Vanillaware kills it on the art every single time, but especially here, like so good. This is such good fantasy vibes. I love it.
You were talking earlier, Nick, about the Switch showing its age and everything. Unicorn Overlord right here, you know, looking good, and you don't need 4K 120 for a tactics RPG.
100% you don't. But I think it just, I will always hammer home the importance of strong art direction over like graphical and you know, technical performance. And I think that's what Vanillaware has in spades, right?
It runs beautifully on the Switch too. Like I was expecting maybe getting like kind of a, okay, it's gonna run, but you know, the Switch is getting old, you know, maybe it'll be fine. It runs so well on the Switch that I like, my Switch OLED is where I am going to play this game 100%. It's fantastic. I will say in the chat, Base Prefect says, I love Vanillaware games, just wish they weren't so painfully straight. I have found church lesbians in this game, so shout outs
the
there.
Church of Lesbians.
I got to, and this is to illustrate a point, which is I don't know that I love the story yet. The story feels very bog standard so far, but I did a side quest where there was this angel who was supposed to be on a pilgrimage to get a bunch of like divine shards or something, and a church had been overtaken by bandits. And so I teamed up with the angel warrior to go clear the bandits out of the church. And then the angel warrior like found this priestess there, and they were like, oh, my beloved, you're safe and stuff like that. I was like, hell yeah. And then they were like, we should execute this bandit. And I was like, that's allyship, so I gotta do it. And so I executed the bandit that day, and the bandits were very mad at me. And so I'm interested to see how that pivots out, because I think that's one of where the story could get interesting. Is I've made some decisions that feel like they have sown the seeds for my own downfall later on, and I want to know whether that is actually what's happening. You know, I let somebody go free and they like run off into the distance and they're like, hey, I'm gonna go do evil stuff now, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have freed that guy. But does that actually mean anything, or is it just kind of like pipping something somewhere for like, now I'm evil or good or whatever? I want to see how that stuff branches out, because obviously Vanillaware is kind of known for story in some ways. I would say like 13 Sentinels, one of the best video game stories I've played in the last 10 years. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. But like Dragon's Crown is novel in the way it tells its story, but isn't exactly like a narrative powerhouse the way that 13 Sentinels is. And so I'm trying to see like, where does this fall on that spectrum?
That JB brings up. Yeah, 13 Sentinels, it had a non-binary / bi couple. I can't remember their name, but yeah, I remember there was a couple. Yeah. So Vanillaware does do like queer representation.
They do, and it's look, we'd have to do a whole episode to talk about 13 Sentinels.
I think I've probably done
Pantheon episode, you should say.
look, the people gotta vote for
Someday.
it. But
Someday.
We're at least a year away from being able to do it technically because it came out in 2020, right?
yes,
Oh,
I
good
will
point.
broadly say like Unicorn Overlord has really impressed me. I think the story is
That's
maybe like the
excellent.
one point where I'm like, maybe it's not gonna be like the
Is
next
this going to be
great story, but
the Octopath Traveler 2 / Xenoblade
maybe.
Chronicles 3, where we just talk about it like ad nauseum for like the rest of the year?
I really hope it gets some people to play more tactics games, and especially I like it because it's not the like classic tactics archetype. I was thinking about this the other day because I was like, oh, this is ogre battle. That's really interesting that it's ogre battle and not tactics ogre, because I think when we talk about tactics games, the thing that comes to mind for a lot of people is that like Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, Fire Emblem area of like you're on a grid, you're moving tiles, it's turn based. But there are other kinds of tactics games that just haven't been so widespread, haven't received that sort of big acclaim that some of those have. And weirdly enough, like the Ogre series has that branching point in its base. So to see Vanillaware say, we're going back to tactics, we're doing tactics again, but we're going back to this side of the tactics equation and seeing like what would happen if we made one of these nowadays is really fascinating to me. And I hope it gets more people to engage with it, because I do think there's a lot of stuff in here that is still very Fire Emblem like coded, is still very like FF Tactics coded, that they'll be like, oh, I love that stuff, and then they'll get tricked into liking ogre battle.
It's trapped
Well,
the whole
it's
time.
funny, like you're talking about Unicorn Overlord, and I was just thinking about FF7 Rebirth and Persona 3 Reload, and I'm still playing Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and I have to say, from a Blood God perspective, oh my God, we are eating right now.
Feasting.
If anything, like we all talked about how incredible 2023 was, the beginning of 2024, if anything, has been actually almost better. Like I don't know if anything's going to live up to the sheer greatness of Baldur's Gate 3 this year, but in the first half of the year, like I have no shortage of things to play, and Unicorn Overlord is another one that is very firmly on my want to play list. But the game that I'm playing actually is an old favorite at the moment. I've been playing it with Amy. I'm back into Stardew Valley.
Let's
Nice.
go.
I'm on my third playthrough of it now. It's just a ritual, I suppose, that I end up playing it with various partners. But in Stardew Valley, we are on year 2, or no, not year 2. We're in fall. We're into the fall now, and we're we've got the farm going. So in like Stardew Valley, there's like a kind of a rhythm, right? Where you get started, you're clearing out your farm, you're getting into the mines, you're starting to do bundles. And then summer is when it really picks up and things start to come together. Probably you're getting your chicken coop in by then. And now we're firmly into the fall. We have money in the bank. We're ready to build a barn. Like we're down to like level 70 of the mines and feeling pretty good. And the thing that I really like about Stardew Valley is that the thing that I like about Stardew Valley is that this game already feels pretty different from when I beat it the first time, because so much content has been released. New mechanics, new sequences, new festivals. There's a new patch coming out at some point. Amazingly, that like Concerned Ape is working on while also making Haunted Chocolatier. I'm really excited to try out the Ginger Island stuff. I'm dating Emily this time.
Oh, really?
Emily is the one.
You're not going to abandon her for someone else?
What? What does that mean?
You keep ditching people to date other people.
Importantly, Kat keeps fumbling.
There you go.
Hey. No. So my original playthrough, I dated Abigail, and then I was kind of dating Leah, and I've seen all of those cutscenes, and I don't want to date a boy. And
But Shane is amazing. He's so drunk.
Emily has blue hair, and she's one of the girlfriends in Stardew Valley that you can that was added later by fan vote, They're like, who do you want to date that you cannot currently date? And a lot of people pick Emily. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just having a good time. It's such a fun game to play co-op. And it's been tricky because Amy she didn't know anything about Stardew Valley to start. So I've had to having to walk her through a lot of the mechanics and like what to do and everything, and having to resist my urge to do everything and let her do stuff too.
Oh, the tappa, I'll do it scenario.
It's like, don't worry, I've got it. She's like, can I play this game too? I'm like, oh yeah, like I probably shouldn't just have you be my
to make an efficient farm here, Amy.
Amy, we have like work to do. Oh my god, like just chill out. But
that's so funny. Like, first of all, I think Emily, if I'm not mistaken, have you gotten her story yet or anything like that?
No, I just finally started giving her gifts.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah. With Shane, it's like, hey, I'm dying of alcohol poisoning. Can you help? I can fix you, man.
To me, it's telling that I'm still playing Stardew Valley after all this time, because like I don't have a lot of time and energy to revisit games anymore. But Stardew Valley is just a game I keep going back to. It's
comfort food.
Mm-hmm. It's very comforting.
It's very much in my like top 25 like of all time.
For sure. It's point. Like you don't need any other farming games unless maybe you want to play was it Rune Factory that has like more of a battle element to it. That's a little different. But if you're just looking for a straight up Harvest Moon game, I feel like you just cannot get any better than Stardew Valley. It just keeps getting better.
It's Stardew Valley like. It's not Harvest Moon like.
Yeah.
You're right.
Stardew Valley has completely conquered that entire genre.
It ate the lunch of Harvest Moon.
It is one of the most.
Down.
It's. I mean, we could do a whole pantheon on Stardew Valley for the love of Pete. It sure did.
Crying in the beer.
It inaugurated an entire generation of farm sim games. Remember, like a couple of years ago, when every game in Nintendo Direct was basically Stardew Valley, but with a twist.
It was great.
Yeah.
I was so mad when people were getting salty about that because I helped localize the new Rune Factory 3, the revision. And like, stop making fun of my work. And they weren't making fun of my work. They had no idea even involved whatsoever. But I was like, I worked hard on Karen.
Nadia, what do you play?
Oh, one thing you didn't mention that we got with the Direct, which, by the way, Eric, congratulations on being allowed to poop.
I cherished every moment.
I'm sorry, it was only Developer Direct. We got Pocket Card Jockey. It escaped
Jockey right on.
It escaped the Apple prison, and it's a little clumsier to play because I mean I do have a stylus for the Switch if I want to, but I'm just using my finger. And I will say parts of it are like obviously they forgot to say like click here instead of tap here or whatever. Like
it was a mobile game to start.
It was a mobile game, and it still kind of has those roots. You can feel them, but it's still so freaking great, so great. So I'm playing that yet again.
Long-time listeners of Axe of the Blood God will know that Nadia and I are both in the Pocket Card Jockey for various reasons. If you've never played it, it's basically Derby Stallion, but for a new generation. You just race horses, generations of race horses, and you're trying to race you're trying to get as far as you can and basically win the Triple Crown. But and so there's a little bit of a Pokemon aspect to it, but it's also hilarious.
It's funny as hell.
It's hilarious and self-aware because the mechanics are built around solitaire, speed solitaire. And it's very stressful in that respect. And there's quite a few, it's quite deep in the way that you manage the actual races. But then, like, your character is an idiot.
You're just so stupid.
And they're just very much like, I died, and now I can see solitaire cards, and that's how I'm directing my horses.
I had brain trauma. And every one you race for, because you're a jockey, and of course they go over, like, this is Japan, they're very serious about the horse racing, even when it's funny as hell. So telling you about the trainer, the owner of the horse, and everybody who owns a horse is a sleazebag. Just the most disgusting people imaginable.
There's a very slightly Whiplash aspect to some of the villains in this game.
And the trainer who's in charge of the horse is like, yeah, they're rich people. That's just how they work.
I mean, it's true.
It is. It's a funny game. It's a great game.
Nick, how about you?
As for me, I've been on quite the RPG kick lately, rolling from Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth a 90 plus hour game into Rebirth, another 90 plus hour game for me. And I needed a little bit of a break. You know, I have Persona 3 Reload burning a hole in my pocket. I've got so much stuff that I want to play, but I discovered this game basically the day before it came out on the direct day, and it's a Penny's Big Breakaway. It is
Oh, I've
a
seen that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
it
by
is
the
a
Mania team, isn't it?
Yes, it is the first 3D game, if I'm not mistaken, by the Sonic Mania team, and it is evocative of that N64 era 3D character platformer. And my God, it is so fun. It is such a wonderful palate cleanser of just taking a little bit break, something completely different. And one thing I really love about my 3D platformers is things like in Odyssey, where you are given your entire skill set up front and it's just up to you to figure out. You can actually get basically wherever you want if you are skilled enough. And I love that Penny's Big Breakaway kind of incentivizes and encourages you to try to get from point A to point B as fast and as stylishly as humanly possible. And it feels so good. It is the thing that I think is like, hey, 3D Sonic, you should pay attention to this game more. I think it would do you well in the long run. So highly recommend. I think it's like $30 or something.
Yeah.
But I am having such a good time with it. It is so cool and so pretty, and she gets to ride around on a yo-yo. I love it.
It looks like a lot of fun. Like, I know everyone tries to do 3D platformers N64 style these days, but I found myself really disappointed with Yooka-Laylee. And just after that, it just kind of did not really. It really kind of killed my appetite for those games. So I haven't played one in a long time.
I wasn't
Genre
huge
killer,
on.
Wow.
I was not huge on Yooka-Laylee, but that said, Impossible Lair, their 2D
That's
side
supposed to be really
scroller,
good.
that one is outstanding. So if you feel it in you to give that franchise another shot, I highly recommend Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair because it is so much fun. And in that same vein, just a shotgun blast, because I just saw JB Balam Garden World mention it in Discord. Pseudo Regalia. If Penny's Big Breakaway is the N64 platformer, then Pseudo Regalia is a PlayStation 1 platformer, but just a lot better than you remember PS1 platformers controlling. Highly recommend both of those games. Pseudo Regalia, you can finish it in like 4 hours. Highly recommend. It's like $5. What are you doing? Pick it up.
What are you doing?
All right. That's it for the tavern. Nadia, take us home.
Well, this is actually a convenient segue because I want to talk a little bit about what I did last week, which was I was going to say I murdered a man, but that probably would be too far so for the algorithm. So I did not murder anybody, but I did attend the Sonic the Hedgehog Symphony, which was a great deal of fun. And I'm someone who's not like a huge Sonic stan. I like the retro games, of course, and I like the 3D games, kind of. I liked Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. And the music, first of all, was absolutely gorgeous. The first half was all kind of orchestrated and went along to footage from Sonic 1, 2, and 3. That was great. Then intermission happened. And then they come back and the whole thing just turned into a rock concert. And I mean, like, I didn't know that, hey, everybody, Nightwish is back. Apparently the kids love this like, I don't know what the name of the genre is, but the screaming stuff that I listened to in 2006, that was like, you know, Nightwish and whatnot, like, which I loved. So, hey, Sonic, what's the new one? Sonic Infinite? Sonic,
Sonic Frontiers. Yeah.
It's a great soundtrack. Holy shit. Like, those vocal tracks are fire. I had to put them on my Spotify as soon as I was coming home. But Sonic fans, any rock concert with nerds will absolutely melt down because we're all repressed. So that's the first thing. Like, if you've ever been to a Proto Man concert, holy shit! Like, I'm surprised people don't get killed. Sonic
we're all
concert,
repressed. Nerds finally get to cut loose.
they do though. Like, and it's Sonic. It's like that times 10. So everyone's out of their minds. There was some alcohol available, I suppose. Maybe that was the problem right there. But I just mention it because every time I'm hanging out with Sonic people, they're very, very excitable in a good way, usually. The first time I saw the Sonic movie, you know, the one with the first one with Jim Carrey, when they revealed Tails at the end, someone behind me screamed like he was on fire. I mean, he literally just like, like shriek of terror, pain. I don't know, but either way, he shrieked. Same thing, exact same thing happened when I saw Sonic 2, and they do the shadow reveal. Somebody screams like their skin is being peeled off. This time, the rock concert part, they sang, I think it was "Open Your Heart" and or "Live and Learn," because of course, and they have at some point footage of the gun being pointed at Maria, and again, someone screams behind me like they're being beheaded. And I understand the like, okay, yeah, like woo, that kind of thing, or no, but just like it was holy shit. Should I get an ambulance? So Sonic fans, I may not be a Sonic fan, but I appreciate your dedication to the nostalgia, because one thing we were talking about on the post show was about how Sonic fans have just been around forever. Like when I came on the internet in the 90s, there were like certain totems of fandoms, and that was you had Final Fantasy fandom.
In the 90s, Sonic fans were there. In the 2000s, Sonic fans were there. 2010s,
the 90s. Yeah,
they won't
exactly.
go away.
It's the Dr. Manhattan meme. But yeah, so Sonic the Hedgehog, very much a nostalgia magnet of potential pits, I suppose, because those people can scream for some reason.
They can indeed. Nick, you know Logan Plant, right?
Yeah, I sure do.
It's our colleague over at IGN, over on Nintendo Voice Chat. He also attended the Sonic
Oh, he must have loved it.
Symphony. Oh, he loved it. Yeah, he was describing it rapturously, I would
It's
say.
great fun, even if you're not a big Sonic fan. Like, it's just one of the more fun concerts I've been to.
I think gaming concerts in general are just like such a wonderful opportunity, even if you aren't a particular part of that fandom, just to be excited, be in a room with people who are excited and passionate about the thing that's being presented. I went to Distant Worlds semi-recently and
concert.
had such a wonderful time. And you talking about the Sonic concert has me hyped up, because I did not unfortunately get tickets to the Nier concert series in LA because it sold out basically instantly, but I'm going to be in Bangkok with my partner next month, and on a whim, I checked to see if I was going to be there, and the Nier concert's going to be in Bangkok when I'm there, so we got tickets, and hearing you talk about the Sonic concert has me so hyped for the Nier concert. I cannot wait.
You should definitely do Sonic as well.
Absolutely, I'd be down.
And that's it for this week's episode of Acts of the Blood God. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for the supporting the pod. I have been your host, Kat Bailey. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/bloodgodpod, where once again, for just $1 a month, you can support the pod. Make sure, enable all the things that we do, and also get access to the show ad-free and to our Discord, where there's conversations that are happening as we speak in the gaming pit about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So come on over, come hang out with our wonderful community. And of course, remember, if you want cool t-shirts and mugs, shop.bloodgodpod.com. If you want to listen to old episodes of the Pantheon a la carte, go over to the Patreon to find all of that. Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell us a little more about where we can find you.
Thank you guys for having me, and you can find me everywhere on the internet at AdventNick.
I love that.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter at _Kappa. Nadia's at Nadia Oxford, and Eric is at D-Boosie. We're heading now to the post show to hang out with the stars of Destiny. And this week we're joined by Abby of the Moon, Anthrax Bees, Azixa, Drew RWX, Flashback 2012, Harvest Lunatic, JB, Kara 313, New Face. Welcome, Kara.
Hi.
Nuclear Sandwich, Sardin, Spooky Man, BR, and Spyrus. That's going to be happening over on the Discord, so come on over. And and remember, we're doing these live now every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific, so come on over to twitch.tv/bloodgodpod. We'll be back next week, as always, to talk about more about the genre we love. But until then, for Nadia, Nick, Eric, and myself, thanks for listening. Happy adventuring.